Pennsylvania's only Great Lakes port, we are uniquely aware of what can happen on these huge bodies of water. 40 years ago tonight, at this hour, a search against all odds was underway on Lake Superior. The Edmund Fitzgerald and her crew were gone. Tonight, we remember two young men from Ashtabula lost too soon. She's broken in two, 530 feet below the surface of Lake Superior. It's the final resting place for the Edmund Fitzgerald and the 29 men who worked on her, two of the youngest crewmen coming from Ashtabula.
He was a very kind, very sweet, very loving, very caring individual.
Elaine Sespico is talking about her brother, Paul Ripa. The 22-year-old had worked on the Fitzgerald for a couple of seasons. On November 10th, 1975, he and the 28 others were on board the Fitz in a vicious storm when they disappeared from radar. It quickly becomes a desperate search.
It looks from the information that we have that it's fairly certain that the Fitzgerald went down. And we're talking now about a matter of life and death and looking for survivors that might be in life rafts or in the water.
As news of the disaster was getting out, another one of Paul's sisters recalls her husband watching the 6 o'clock news.
And they were just giving the name out. When I called to him, dinner's on, and he said, "Doggone it, Sandy, I didn't catch the name of that boat that just sank."
We're hearing it over the news. And I called our stepmom, and it was, it was devastating.
Maybe we could pick up some survivors. If not at night, then maybe at first light. Over.
And we held out hope, and we just, we called the Coast Guard, we called every day, almost many times a day, and nothing.
Also from Ashtabula, Ohio, the youngest of the 29 men who lost their lives on board the Edmund Fitzgerald that fateful night, Carl Peckel.
Oh, Carl, he was a very kind-hearted, shy, would blush easily type of fella.
Teresa Salo bumped into her friend, 20-year-old Carl Peckel, just before he was to leave on that last trip. He asked her to have coffee or lunch. She couldn't then, but
I said, well, why don't we go out, plan for when you get back. We'll go out and do lunch or something. I remember him walking away with that sheepish grin that he would have. He had this funny way of grinning. And I just, then after what I heard what happened to the Fitzgerald, it just crushed me.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down to the big lake they call Gitchagumi.
Within a year, the sinking would be immortalized by the famous Gordon Lightfoot ballad. Now, 40 years later, the story may be told on the big screen. A movie script is being written, focusing on the four youngest crew members, including Carl and Paul.
I guess I was thinking, well, the younger guys, they were taken at a time that was just so early that, they hadn't really much of an opportunity. They had their full lives ahead of them. And so from a certain perspective, that really seemed to be perhaps the most tragic.
Hunter says the support of the families has been vital to his project, but for those families and friends, the real-life story plays out vividly in their memories of a brother and gifted athlete, a friend and talented musician, and of what might have been.
It gets me emotional. My husband will tell you, every time they start playing that Anniversary, or I know it's coming up, I start crying.
It's kind of like a bittersweet time because he was young, but we were blessed to have him for the years that we had him.
We always have these get-togethers, these family dinners, and we always think, and I know we'll think of it really hard this November, is if Paul were only here.
I want to thank Bob Frisbee at the Ashtabula Maritime and Surface Transportation Museum and the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in Whitefish Point, Michigan for their help. And if you want to hear more from our interviews, an exclusive web story will be posted on our site, yourerie.com.